we're coming here after playing 2,000 point battle. Again, Alex's first old world battle. You've brought your touted Lizardmen. We've been watching you paint and build them over what, the last 4 months or so, 3 months?
Yeah, it's not long. I
Yeah,
think it's not long. It was the school
less.
holidays here where we bought the high elf stuff and I hadn't really painted any Elizabeth from there, so maybe 6 weeks to 8 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, you've now managed to get what, 2,500 points together, painted really well, which we'll show in a sec. But what's your first insight, your first takeaway from your first game? How generally did you think it went?
Uh well, it went well enough. I probably need to be more aggressive. I thought I was going to be. So that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to look at the photos,
Yeah.
show people the types of decisions I had. I mean, even if it depends how much you want to say, Paddy, beforehand, but
No,
probably seeing the
I'll pull up the
deployment.
photos. Yeah, I'll pull them up now. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah, so that was not how I had it, I imagined in my head. Um, and in hindsight, why would I have been so linear? But I do think some there are some other games, like there's a great game called Myanmar 44, and it has a whole bunch of offshoots. There was a fantasy version called Battle Law. War gamers would know it well, because it's sort of the entry level board game into grognard life. But I really like the idea that there's sort of three segments to a battlefield, the middle and both the left and right flanks.
Mm.
And I also think like you come into Warhammer expecting you're going to roll ones at times, you're going to roll sixes at other times. And you're not just going to be able to say, I'll do this and put this here and it's just going to win. So I had this notion that I wanted the Carnosaur to face off against the Knights with AP. um, I wanted the infantry in the middle, and it sort of looks like I got what I wanted, but I just expected, I don't know why I expected you to have sort of things like the knights and demigriffs and cannons maybe all together
Mm.
or things like that. So when this happened, I think also I thought having less to deploy and having the first turn would be good. And I
Mm.
actually think,
I
no,
think,
not at all, because the 24-inch range, like I could have just sat back 1 inch and
yeah.
been out of a lot of things and forced you to come forward. But instead, I sort of had to move forward, and that I didn't want to commit with some of these things. So
Why don't you just run
yeah, I
through
just from the
from?
outset was awkward.
Do you want to run through from the bottom? What have you got? You started setting up in the middle, to be fair, but why don't you
Yeah.
just run through what units you got from the bottom of that photo to the top?
Yeah. Well, if the Carnosaur at the bottom and it's only a Scar Veteran, which I think is the right way to go. Save about 60 points for not a lot, and points are tight, especially if you want to run a slan. I had three Pterodon Riders and a hero in there, mostly so he'd be protected from missile fire, so could carry sort of like an assassin. He had, I think, the sort of striking. I can't remember if I gave it something else, but the aim was to try to get it into combat with the wizard or the War Machine crews.
Yeah.
The aim with the Pterodons was to try to just drop rocks on the Outriders, and we'll see later that that probably wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
I had those two units of Skinks that have moved forward, so they both had Vanguard,
Yeah.
and the Temple Guard are the first little block of infantry you can see before a Bastillodon with the beam on it. And then there's 10 more Saurus behind it, and they're really similar units, just full command. The aim is to take a punch, so I've put in Musician and Standard just to sort of be able to try to survive. They Temple Guard have Shield Wall and Stubborn, and the Saurus had Shield Wall. There's a Slan behind a Bastillodon. It was a pretty weak Slan. I didn't realize that Drain Magic was bad until like 3 hours before the game, so I sort of just wanted to stick with it. I like wanted to use the other high magic spells, but yeah, it was pretty not very effective. It didn't have much else going on. I had Lore
It did.
Familiar.
It randomly stopped me casting a spell when I accidentally moved into the range of
Ah,
it
that's all right.
when I didn't have to move into the range. So
I don't think I
continue.
did much else with the slan at
Yeah.
all, though. I had Lore Familiar and what Soul of Stone. I think I just wanted to have a level 4 defensively.
Hmm.
There's a Stegodon there after that, just a basic Stegodon with a giant bow, and there's a Troglodon far off
At
on
the
the
very
left
top, yeah.
flank. And it's a small amount of chameleon skinks you can see that I didn't realize, yeah, was
Yeah,
way
just
too
over there.
close.
Yeah, so that's a rule we didn't play correctly. They were 6 inches away. They're meant to be 12 from the nearest enemy. So they would have been like, yeah, anyway, they still would have got their shot off. They get quick fire anyway, right? Don't they? So they just would have moved
Yeah, I
and
guess
fired
like
anyway.
in hindsight, they sort of better played jumping in and out of the forest. So I probably just would have started them behind the forest and then
Yeah.
around.
I'll quickly run through what I had because I'm obviously playing Empire. It's funny you should say you thought you were going to be out of the blocks aggressive because that's what I was expecting you to do, and then you didn't do it, which we'll get to later, like as aggressively as I was expecting anyway. Um, but what I've got down here is 10 Empire Knights with drilled, full command, and the War Banner. I think, yeah. Steam Tank, 4 Outriders, Hellblaster, Cannon, and General in the back line. One thing for this matchup that's really very, very handy is that your threats are all large targets, which meant that I could put my artillery behind my units and still be able to shoot them, which turn one has devastating effects in a second, which you'll notice a huge hole in the next photo. These are 5 Empire Knights that have stubborn. Plan with them was to just kind of try and bait something out of you after hopefully clearing the skinks in the middle, put them in the middle. Hopefully you charge with something. They hold 1 round of combat. I trigger stubborn and then I'm able to counter charge with something else. I've got a battle level 4 wizard there with battle magic and lore familiar, so I can pick my spells. 10 gunmen there, and then 5 demis on the top end. I was pretty happy with how deployment went in the end, and your point about going first, not just on your turn, but like being the more aggressive deployer, I think has its downside just for the amount of counters you can do. Like I had so
Mm.
much stuff that I could generally you start deploying in the middle with your stuff that you don't care as much about, or that you think are holding the middle, and when you see them push their like kill unit, the unit that's their win condition, out to the flank, then you know how. Like I'm not going to put my demi. Like the demis are probably one thing that could kill the Carnosaur, but I didn't want the Carnosaur to kill them. So
Well, it was
I
my last thing, but yeah, I got
yeah,
absolutely wedged. First 5 things I dropped were exactly what I wanted, and then I
yeah,
just had to put things down. So I sort of went infantry, skinks, and the idea was, well, all of those other parts were sort of interchangeable, and I sort of wanted the pterodons to deal with the outriders that I knew were coming. But yeah, the Carnosaur was the last thing I put down, or the
mm,
Trog was, but it was the last
the
decision
trog
to
bit,
put
yeah.
down.
Because I think I
Yeah,
still
and
had
it was
I had 2 units left or something at the end.
yeah.
One of which, like, so I'd already put my outriders down. Yeah, so I think it was my Empire Knights and either my demis or my tank that I still had left. And that was just like when you can put those high points units down with like after seeing a strategy develop, then you're in a pretty good position.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking for, that because I had sort of, we'll talk about the canon later,
Yeah,
but I'd sort
sure
of,
thing.
that was sort of the borderline. I knew mostly what you'd be taking, and it was really, would you take a cannon or not, or Empire
Yeah,
archers or not? And that was sort of like, okay, doesn't really matter too much. I knew there'd be a steam tank, I knew there'd be a big unit of knights, and I knew there'd be demigriffs and probably a griffin. And those things were the bits that I had to have a plan to deal with. But the plan was take the hit, attack with monsters. And so I sort of needed to know where 2 of them would be because I couldn't just out and out go 1-on-1. But I think that's
yeah,
one of the things that is a mistake. Like here I am, 0-1 in the old world. But people, I think you sort of sit in their head and say, well, if he's got a Star Dragon, I'll take a Star Dragon. But one of you is going to lose, like,
Yeah.
and you're going to lose the game right
Yeah,
there. So I
exactly.
think you
Yeah.
want your good units against their average units, unless you're getting a flank charge. And that was sort of the gist that without flying, the Carnosaur, who I think actually was really good, and
Yeah.
we'll probably talk more about that later. But some of the other models really needed to be supporting each other, and that I couldn't. That's where I was sort of flummoxed. I couldn't get them to coordinate properly because deployment. I think I was too aggressive in deployment. I could have split, the skink hero out, got another turn down. I could have just let you go first, like in many ways too. So
Yeah. Because I think the next photo I've got is at the end of mine, and I don't want it'll. Yeah, it does. So let's just go. So you went first. So this was the end of full deployment, including vanguards, scout, etc. But turn one, you move these up. You move everything up generally through the middle. The Slan casts fiery convocation on these guys, kills my champion who has the grenade launcher thing, which I was very excited to fire, which I didn't get to. And then these 10 finish them off. Do they just straight up kill them? Is that what
I
happened?
felt like maybe I got two with Fiery
And then
Convocation.
the
It felt like I
yeah,
still had more to come as well. Like the
yeah,
Skinks finished them off, and I think I had other stuff to shoot with them. We were all just sort of okay, that's it, they're
yeah,
done.
they got wiped, and
Yeah,
which is funny. As you said, like your catchphrase, which I'm going to coin from now on, pretty much is something always dies. And you set up this army at the start, and you're like, oh, it looks so cool, man. It looks sick.
it does look cool.
I can't wait to use all of these things and just kill heaps of
That's right.
stuff. And I was very excited to use the Outriders, particularly just for the Champion's gun. It's fun and it's just like,
Yeah, yeah, I love Outright. Love it.
so they got wiped, which was depressing off the bat, but a pretty solid turn really for you.
Yeah.
Right off the
Well, I
bat, I
didn't
think.
move the Carnosaur, and
Yeah,
that's something I'll come to regret.
yeah.
And I didn't really do the Stegodon well either.
No,
Like I
so,
needed to make it
yeah.
a there, and I didn't.
We did learn turn one that Skink's really good though, I think.
Yeah,
The
well, that the
javelin,
lesson of turn one was I didn't need the pterodons at all because they were there for that job, and I warped my deployment a bit to have that when maybe on the other side they could have just swung right down and do what the Trogger's doing.
yeah.
But the skinks are just incredible. Yeah, they're undercosted. The
Mhm.
rules benefit them at the moment, and poison alone is just worth on such a cheap model. It's extraordinary.
They 5 points a model.
5 points, yeah.
That's wild for move and shoot, 12-inch
Yeah.
range, and poison
Well,
is
six
huge.
movement two is a just a great number for something
Yeah,
so expendable. Four, the
totally.
difference between 4 and 6 is mile oceans,
Yeah, especially when you can
So
march and then shoot. That's crazy.
yeah, it just closes
Um,
like half the board. Vanguard's 5 points. So you're gonna get 2 units per thousand that sorry, 2 units in a 2,000 point game that are gonna have Scout or Vanguard, and
yeah,
you can just cause trouble.
we'll go on to so this was the end of my turn two. As you can see in the middle, old mate Bastillodon got popped turn one. It was pretty sad for you at least. It was like the cannon the cannon was like when you're running against Lizardmen, in my mind I was like I was always bringing the steam tank. I did question whether I was bringing the cannon or not, but then presuming you were going to have 3 dinosaurs, I had Troglodon, Stegodon, and Carnosaur in there. I didn't know you were bringing the Bastillodon as well. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm glad I brought the cannon. Um, the strategy for my list was to kind of weaken everything before combat happened, clean up with these guys, and the general sit in the middle and charge. But the cannon, turn one, rolls a 6 on the D3, I'm pretty sure, or a 5, and one-shotted the Bastillodon, I think by himself, maybe something just
No,
didn't kill
you
him.
must have got a wound. I think you got a wound somewhere else.
Yeah,
And I don't know if it was the bow or the
the
Hochland
bow,
long
yeah,
rifle.
Hochland.
It was
Um,
once it took a wound, it felt because I wasn't aware of the great cannon distinction, and I can't remember. It was the Great Cannon, I think, that popped the Bastiladon and
Yeah.
not the Steam Tank Cannon.
No,
I can't
no, the
remember.
steam tank didn't. I think it only did a wound
Yeah.
to
So the
maybe the
difference,
stag or something. Yeah.
yeah, just the D3+1. It just having it's hitting two wounds instead
Mm.
of you could just roll low.
Yeah.
It is just it's great. And I'm really glad to see it redeemed in a world where monsters are talked about a lot. I
Mm.
think cannons are legitimate. Like they're just consistent. So it wasn't
Totally.
out of the ordinary. I didn't feel like when it died, I didn't feel like, oh, that was lucky. I feel like, yep,
Yeah.
it took two blows from something. It's the weakest of the monsters. It's only got the four wounds.
Mm.
Yep, just something's got to die, I suppose.
It tried to fire up its laser beam. I dispelled it, which I don't know if I can dispel that, to be fair. I'm not, no, you can. You can
Yeah, it's a
dispel bound spells.
bound
Yeah.
spell.
Yeah, sweet. Well, I was really scared of it when I read, because I only just read that rule the day before we played, and I was like, "Wow, that's very strong." Was it 3d3, strength 5 hits, AP2 or something?
Yeah, I can't remember. It's good. It's the
Yeah,
range too. So the
20.
one, if you take the Stegodon one and you pay a bit more because you have to get an ancient Stegodon, I think it's 25 points. The Bastiladon one's 15. And a
Mm,
Bastiladon's just sort of like a weaker Stegodon in many ways.
yeah,
But it's 24-inch range, or I think. So or it's a larger range, and it just makes such a big difference because as they were there to, it was in the middle to sort of flank charge
yeah.
something, but in hindsight, something was going to die,
Mm.
and yeah, well, more than one thing died, I suppose.
You can see there you tucked your Carnosaur in, probably scared of the steam tank, I presume. Was that what you were thinking?
Yeah, definitely. That's what I regret. Like, I think I should be scared of the steam tank, but it's
Yeah.
just going to take two wounds or whatever, and I should have just later on. I didn't realize how much those knights just didn't really have the punch to do any damage to it. So,
Mm.
yeah, I should have just risked it. I would have got countercharged or something, but I think I could have held off on my own on that wing and just needed to. And if that had diverted the cannons or the Hellblaster away for a turn, it might have been worth it. It's only 300 points in the end for something that was probably the best unit for me.
Yeah. Quick rundown of the turn then. So I killed the Bastiladon. I killed 5 skinks with Fireball, I think. And then instead of shooting at them as they were fleeing, this is where I again learned how strong rallying is, as equally as fleeing can be. Instead of shooting them with my handgunners, I shot at the Saurus for some reason. Don't think I killed anything. I should have just laid another round into them and tried to decimate them. Managed to cut Arcane Urgency on these guys to move them twice. So they went up their wheeled and came in, trying to set up what eventually I was hoping would force some combat into there. Marched Empire Knights up, moved them up, and moved that up. And I think I fired at the steg and maybe took a wound. Can't remember, but I fired all my
Something
stuff.
wounded the Steg too, yeah.
Yeah.
It was wounded three times in the game.
Hellblaster, I forgot to move, which is I didn't necessarily forget. I wasn't sure if you were going to move up enough for me to shoot it, so I just left it, which was dumb because we'll get to it later. But I didn't get to fire it, which was really annoying. You can see there at your movement how that finished after your turn one. They managed to pepper off a wound on a demi as well, the old chameleon skink. So they were
It's because they're at close range, Paddy.
yeah, yeah, true. That did actually probably help. Cool. So that's how it ended up after um, my turn one.
I think
Disappointing
it's worth
here.
noting that the magic situation at both of us sort of stayed out of each other's dispel ranges,
Yeah,
and that was sort of a deliberate thing. Um, I just wanted to see what I could get off and see how much it mattered, and I do think, in hindsight, that magic. I don't know. I'm interested. I think it could be a bit overblown, the
I
whole idea.
agree.
Like, I think, yeah, maybe like if you're fighting some sort of vampire Khans army that's rolling off all these plus X spells, but it isn't. Yeah, I just think he's still rolling 50-50. I couldn't put the Slan in danger in the first turn with all those war machines. And there's a magic bow, we should mention. So even though I had Ethereal on the Slan, like it could have done some damage, I wasn't willing to do that first turn. I think that was a big thing in the like it looks like there too. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That was sort of what I wanted, you to converge on the middle, but I'd lost one of the monsters already, and the Carnosaur had become invisible. So
Yeah. I'm just trying to find a couple more photos. Because I don't think I have the middle turns. But oh wait, no, I do. It was just a short game, wasn't it?
yeah, the first three, it was yeah, the damage was done, wasn't it?
Yeah. So your turn two, just while I find these photos, um, walk us through after you'd lost the Bastillodon, your stag was behind that rock, your Trog had walked around the trees, and your
Yeah,
chameleons, I mean your skinks in the middle were fleeing. You would put your pterodons into the forest,
yeah.
waiting, trying to bide the drop rock, bide time for the
Yeah.
drop rocks to
Well,
move,
the
right?
pterodons I wanted to just fly over, so I didn't care if they died. Um, but couldn't get the range, so that was a bit awkward. And I probably should have just thrown them out there like skinks in the end.
Mm,
I sort of had looked into the various ways. I sort of know how the rules used to work, where characters could charge out of units, and I'm not necessarily sure that that's still possible. But I
I don't
also
think
thought,
so.
well, no, I didn't think so either. So, but otherwise, like I just was, I would have been happy if I could have got over the knights, even if I've been exposed to the Hellblaster. If I could have then been able to maneuver in the sense that I would be able to charge one of the war machines the next turn, but I just couldn't do it. Like I fell about an
Mm,
inch or two short. So that was a horrendous mistake to the point where I was very high on pterodons and now I'm very low on them. Just because the skinks are so good, it just doesn't matter. Like for 20 or I think I thought they marched 20 inches and that there was probably a couple of inches short on some of those ranges that for an extra bit, they're still really vulnerable to armies with missile fire. Whereas you're happy
mm,
every time a skink dies, like who cares? Toughness 2, 5 points. It's not a big deal. But the Carnosaur I had to tuck in because again, like if I charged the Knights, I would have got countercharge for starters and the steam tank would have hit me.
yeah.
And that was the whole thing really on that side that it wasn't, I don't know if it was the wrong decision not to charge, but it was just the wrong deployment to end up in that situation. I just shouldn't have ended up having to worry about that sort of stuff. In the middle, I think I just sort of stood my ground, um, and was waiting for like the Slan ducked in and out, doing something of limited effectiveness with the ethereal spell. The Stegodon moved into the line of sight of the cannon to
Yeah.
shoot the bow. And again,
Yeah.
that was just wasn't decisive enough. I just should have marched up, taken a hit to the face, and charged something. But I probably would have got hit by the demigriffs. That's why by themselves. Um,
Yeah. I've got let me pull up. I've just found this photo. So I'll share the screen again. So this was, sorry, this was at the end of both of our turn twos, because you can see a pterodon
yeah,
had flown over, dropped rocks on the knights, killed one with after I saved like 4 wounds or something randomly. But that I think goes into the weakness of the pterodon. That spell, that ability not having AP hurts, I
mm.
think, because you're really only going to drop stuff on 4+ saves at best. Like they have
There's
three
just so
plus.
many things that the isn't in the aren't in the game. So no one is take like I didn't take many of those mid-range units like Coal Ones or Croxagores because they just become the target for shooting or
Mm,
spells. And it seems like you want the low stuff or something with an armor save that's
mm,
cavalry up towards monsters. And it's a shame because you've got all these really great abilities and things, but they just, yeah, they don't pass the muster. Like you run it, if I was flying over a unit of 10 handgunners, awesome, but it's because they're lightly armored and toughness 3, and like there just doesn't seem to be a lot of that around.
yeah, and I know you've just got some ripidactyls. Is that what they're called? Ripidactyls, who are like
Yeah.
the close combat version of pterodons, who I think are much better and probably more threatening because of that. Their charge range is their strength. They have swift stride, right? I presume.
Yeah, they would.
So they got fly 10, swift stride, charge range of 19, flying. On turn two, you should be able to like charge, something in the back line, basically. If you can march over the back of my guys. Are they skirmish? That's the other thing. If they skirmish, then that's 360.
I don't know. It'll be interesting. Look, we'll see. I'll definitely play them in the next game
Mm.
and just throw them at something. They do have an extra attack or some bonuses that give extra attacks on top of that, but they relatively have the same profile. Your Pterodon
I think
Rider
it's the
is only one
attacks, yeah.
attack.
But don't they have Furious Charge or something? Or Frenzy,
All
don't
of the
they?
things with the Ripidactyls are on the Ripidactyl,
Yeah.
which is not bad, but I just don't know if it's like I think the game has moved away from sort of that auto break situation where you want one-on-one combats are just risky, which is great. It's great for
Yeah.
the game because we used to just slam units into each other and be like, hey, my chariot ran into your lord, and
Mm.
whoever wins this fight's going to win. It was highly dramatic, but after you'd spent 3 hours setting up and packing up, it probably wasn't worth it. I do think the way fallback in good order, give ground, that sort of stuff works, which you can sort of start to see in this image. It's great. The game's better.
Mm. Yeah. Let's just explain quickly what happened here. So you flew over. I tried to charge the pterodons in the forest, fell 1 inch short.
Oh
Um,
yeah. That's
and
a great
then
moment we've forgotten about.
yeah, so I think I rolled three. So I was obviously charging into difficult terrain, which meant I had to take the low dice on my 2d6, and then after -1 movement. And I think I needed to roll a 5 on my dice from the 2d6 and my Swift Stride, and I rolled 4, and I fell 1 inch short because you would just kind of come to terms with the fact that you were going to cop the charge and see what happened because your Carnosaur at the time was sitting behind them.
Yeah.
I ended up missing the charge, and then you guys just flew over the top of them, laughing, dropping rocks on them, which was like pretty hilarious to think about. And then I think I just moved this tank up so I could fire at
Yeah.
something, maybe, but it was before. So this is actually at the end of your turn three, because I had charged up on my turn two. You had flown over turn three, I think. I think that's how it worked anyway. Because turn four is where it gets all hairy. But this kind of set up this
Yeah.
precarious situation. Um, can't see it perfectly from this angle, but my demis had set up to charge through here. Your skinks that were there must have fled away.
Yeah. What happens here? I think you're so what's missing is that the knight's in the middle.
Oh
So this
yeah,
is
that's
turn
right.
three.
They're actually right behind here.
Interestingly, yeah, I think the Stegodon. I don't know why the Stegodon's still there, or it because I guess it doesn't matter because it can't draw line of sight to the demi,
Hmm.
so it just doesn't matter. But I had charged the Knights of the Temple Guard. Now, this was sort of like desperation at this
That's right.
point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it, but it was more like I've got nothing good. The Demigryphs are about to slam into one of my units, evade they will square up or close the gap, and they will
Mm.
then close the door, and they will then go straight onto my Slan or off the board, and my Carnosaur is just going to be standing around with nothing to do. So I just thought, well, the whole point of these things is they've got to get into combat, take a hit, they will survive, which, they lost 9 guys or something.
Yeah.
So they
But they
did survive.
survived. Yeah, that's all, and that's what we're learning, I think, is you just need that unit to survive one round of combat, and then you counter like you
Yeah.
you hit the charge on the next round of combat.
Yeah. But a really unusual situation occurred where these skinks fled. Well, I
Yeah.
chose to flee, and they fled very far from a multiple charge, which caused havoc
Over
with.
there.
Yeah, they fled into the gap. Paddy is put between the Carnosaur's head and the Demis,
Yeah. In there.
which created a whole cascade of really like nonsensical rules where I think the right result sort of occurred on the board, but in the wrong order. So
Yeah.
it really like the craziness of I guess another outcome that we learned was that intentional fleeing is very powerful with the new
Huge.
rules
Yeah.
where maybe I say new rules, but I was a fourth ed, sixth ed person, and I didn't really get a lot of eighth ed in. So just the fact that you can rally and do stuff is foreign to me. You used to, if you rallied at all, you usually just got smashed again by the unit that came through, and you'd keep
Yeah,
going until you broke. Now the whole Paddy's Knights rallied and literally walked away and charged something else, like
yeah,
the turn later. But they sort of rallied, reformed, facing the other direction, which we both think is right in the reading of the rules. And the Skinks were doing similar stuff.
yeah. All right. So this is the situation you were talking about where we ended up in this janky combat. Before the demis were over here waiting. You had tried to charge my knights who were like here. They fled over there,
Mm-hmm.
leaving your temple guard in the middle at the end of your turn. I declared a charge with the demis and the general into the temple guard. I also tried the skinks aren't there, which is a shame, but the skinks that were here, I tried to charge with these two units here. They fled all the
Yep.
way through here,
Yep.
um, which created this hairy situation where when my demis were trying to charge from here, they were about here on a slight angle. They clipped here in a line like that. And then as I was trying to close the door, hit the fleeing skinks. We played the rule that they die. Might not be correct, but it was very confusing to find the right outcome. I think we're all happy with it. We consulted Mike as well, who's our rules guru, and
The Oracle.
the
I
Oracle.
want to meme his head onto the troglodyte in my like Oracle.
Yeah, the law of rules. He gets to get the signature of the law of rules. On the way, clipping through, they killed these skinks and then clipped them also, but they were on some weird angle like that, so they closed in on that. These closed backwards kind of on them, allowing the charge to happen. Ended up being like the defining moment of the game. I think the result probably ended up how we were expecting it to, but that took a good 40 minutes, I reckon, to figure out how to properly do it.
Yeah, my understanding is that if you just declared charge, so if we had been like this was very late at night,
Yeah,
you'd been at work, I'd been at work, you'd driven an hour to my house. It like that has a lot to do with it. On
yeah,
top of that, like if you just sat there and said, I'm going to charge this, I wonder what'll happen. We would have probably, because we talked a lot, there was an impassable terrain piece just at the top about, well, what happens if you edge that and you come through. So the issue
yeah,
just came down to if you declared two, you just had to declare two charges against
yeah,
both the Temple Guard and the Saurus, and that would have solved the problem because then if you hit, you've made accidental contact with the skinks, not run into a fleeing enemy, which means you have to stop if you hit them or something. And that,
yeah.
so yeah, the right result occurred for sure. Like no one wanted the skinks tactically to flee 11 into the
No,
path of the demigriffs.
yeah. Um, so this combat ensues. I think I wiped mainly I think I killed 7 Tomb
It was
Guard.
definitely 7. Yeah, they were down to 2 guys.
Yeah,
And that was with a
yeah,
charge champion that whiffed like on a challenge. Like I challenged with the Temple Guard and survived as well. And then the demigriffs just ripped them apart
sorry.
or
Yeah.
something wild like that.
One thing as well, which leans into why I was playing drilled and why demis are quite good. I think five. I wouldn't take them 5 wide anymore. That was really hard to maneuver. But I think it's a rank like a line of 4 is good because of the supporting attacks, the FAQ that came out allowing both mount and rider to get a supporting attack. So I think these 3 are in base contact. This guy's obviously not. He attacked into there, but this guy with a lance and 1 attack from the demi going in as well really makes a difference, which is how I intend to play drilled. This is Mike's army, but how I think drilled can kind of be maximized is by having a unit of 10 on the charge, go to a line of 10 once there's room to allow it. If you can, you probably can't do that many in one turn, but maximize your front rank, and then you're just getting all those supporting attacks with the lancers makes it huge, I think. But that was a bit of a digression. Sorry. This combat unfolds. These guys do shield wall and stubborn, is that right?
Yeah.
That
So
has a
they
cool
lost pretty
interaction.
badly.
Yeah.
I think they lost by 7 overall or lost by 9 overall.
Nine.
It was pretty.
Like this is one combat was 9 in my favor after
Hmm.
the flanks cancelled each other out, banners cancelled each other out.
Yeah. But the
But
Saurus were the ones who fled. And
yeah,
so the interesting thing was that the two Temple Guard that were left, because of stubborn, pretty much hang on. But the
mm.
Saurus broke, and I can't remember if they fell back in good order. Did they? I think they fled.
The temple guard,
The
no,
Saur no, the Saurus,
the
yeah,
Saurus broke the broken fled. Yeah,
yeah, and they fled. So that was the problem. Like ideally it would have been good, but the issue was that you were able to charge the Carnosaur next turn, which meant that there were two separate combats next to one another. So and the Griffon had done its damage um and was able to leave because they Saurus gave ground. And so that I think you
the
passed a
temple guard,
restrain test.
the temple guard gave ground,
Sorry,
right?
Temple Guard.
And the
Yeah,
Saurus fled.
yeah,
So this was photo was taken before. So these Empire Knights also charged into the Carnosaur though on
yeah,
this turn. So they were in his flank. I stupidly accepted a challenge. I always get confused at challenge time, and I feel like I've made the right decision. I always make the wrong one. I shouldn't have accepted the
yeah,
challenge because then as I just spoke about, drilled was a waste of time. I did the whole
yeah.
point was to get supporting attacks. I didn't get them, and I was attacking first because I charged. But the thought process was to just hold you up as long as possible, and it kind of worked in the end. But you were left with two Temple Guard here that fell back or gave ground to about there.
Hmm.
Demi's followed up. General turns around because you can't see here, but the Trog, the Stag, and the Chameleon Skinks were coming into the gunmen and the artillery. I felt like after this combat, I kind of, I felt like I'd won at that point if I didn't lose too much of the battle.
Yeah, I think so. I
Um,
mean, to sort of wrap it up, because it will become more complicated.
mm,
Ultimately, both units of infantry broke, which meant that the Slan was exposed, and I was just going to run him around after that and try to hang on to my points. The Knights had a whack at the Carnosaur, and I think won combat. Like I defeated the champion pretty easily. Think you won with the War Banner in there, but
yeah,
rolled. I stuck around, and then I started winning. The Carnosaur started winning that combat as the Demigriffs finished off the Temple Guard. So the game sort of ended over here with that steam tank and the Demigriffs against the Carnosaur. Um, which probably it was my like it probably could have gone your way, but it could have gone my way. Like with the steam tank was not dying, but whether or not the Carnosaur is really good, and that was a big deal. I think like just so hard to do any damage to it. So
yeah,
and just the strength 7, like you just don't whiff as much it seems with the Carnosaur because like even you miss some attacks, but all the attacks just land. So.
yeah.
That's
You've
sort of what
got
happened, I guess, there. And at
you've
the other side of the
so
board,
this is yeah, this is how it
yeah,
ended basically. That combat was happening here. I wiped the Temple Guard. You wiped my unit of um, knights. My general had gone back to deal with the pterodons, so they're dead. The
the
Troglodon.
pterodons end up
So
charging and
yeah, pterodon
the
charged and
Hellblaster
killed.
crew.
Yeah, killed the Hellblaster eventually. I took 2 turns though to kill 3. Weapon
Yeah.
skill 3, strength 3, toughness 3 dudes.
The general
They
then kills them.
general kills them. I fire everything I have at the Trog. He survives with 2 wounds. While all that combat was going on, the cannon killed the Stag who was coming in to try
Yeah.
and again wipe out the back lines, which is why I sent the knight and the general back. But the cannon ended up killing it before it mattered. But knights run down the rest of the chameleons. But that is basically how it ends. That's what's left on the board. Ends up being about, I think I secured about 1,000 victory points. You secured about 500. So, um, it felt I remember you saying if you thought initially it was a bigger victory, but like Lizardmen units are quite expensive, the big ones anyway. Like Carney, Slan, Trog is 800 points, right? I
Yeah.
think so.
I think I would have been able to keep the Slan alive, but not much else. So I think I realized the Carnosaur was in a fair fight because the steam tank his facing had sort of become distorted. But I don't think I was keeping anything at the back. I think the next bit was potentially the Trog charges the cannon, maybe wins, but then loses to the Griffon or whatever's
Mhm.
left. And that was sort of the way in my head it felt like it was going to go at that point. I mean, there were definitely winners and losers to me. If you go down the list, like, I mean, I can probably say the Lizardman point of view, and you could give the Empire one,
Yeah,
but the
yeah, yeah.
can't, and it just should have been more aggressive. It's very difficult to take down. And it's just cheaper than you think. Like it's 300 points, it's not 500, you know? The Slan can get you. That Slan was pretty cheap. The Slan was a loser for me. High Magic is a bit of a disappointment for me. I think Battle Magic, yeah, is the best. It's hard to justify a 400 point caster like you get fly, you get the built-in ward save, but the spells, I just don't think they're going to be reliable enough. Like I think you need a four to defend, but you just don't know what you're going to get. Attacking, there's just aren't enough bonuses for the Slan in my mind. I'll try some different things with him at them in the next few, where some of them I'm intending not to take him at all. I was surprised the stubborn shield wall thing is good, but it's awkward in the Lizardmen army, so you don't get like the Saurus that are compulsory, it's really difficult to get that combination, and it's definitely the stubborn, not the shield wall, that makes it work. And I'll put a battle standard in it in the next game and see, like, but that's turning it into a 500 point block at that point. So I don't know if that's worth it for what the output is. The Temple Guard are good, but you just can't fit them in. Like if they're just too superfluous to everything else because the skinks are amazing. Like the skinks,
Mm.
I don't know how many skinks would be too many. I really don't at this point. It's probably just limited by cost. I think I've got lists where I can fit in about 50 and it doesn't feel gross. Like you sort of want them lying around all the time. They're so cheap. They do so many different things. That's where I dump the pterodons for the moment. They just don't feel like that much harder to kill than the skinks, but they just they cost too much. Going down the back, I don't know. I think I'd rather just have five skinks running around because the deterrence effect is big too with the skinks. They just hang about. The Bastillodon, who knows?
Yeah,
We'll see.
have to try
Like,
again.
try again. Stegodon, sadly too, I should have been more aggressive and just pumped it out there.
Specifically,
One way or the other.
the giant bow seems kind of average from what I could
Yeah,
see.
it's it's sort of like stuck on and free. If you do take the engine, you lose the bow, but you're paying. It's the free option, I suppose, the bow. And the Trog, same thing. They're just sort of like stuck in the middle, I suppose, where I, are they as good Bastillodons and Troglodons as Stegodons and as Carnosaurs? When you're getting a Carnosaur for 300 points, I don't know, like a Trog's 200, I suppose, but I really like, and I got the spell wrong, but I can't see anything else but battle magic, but it takes a long time. At movement seven, no swift stride. Um, it's still a bit too brittle to run up into something without getting shot. It's going to be a good target. So there's a lot of stubborn on those monsters. That's probably something I'd like to lean into. I was hoping psychology would play a better role, but it didn't. Terror was pretty much meaningless. Um, and yeah, I found even though I thought I was ready for missiles and high armor values, I still found it difficult to deal with to the point where things like the razor standard and stuff like that. Like I had the biting blade and it was great. Like just
Mm.
high AP against high AP minuses against Empire seemed good.
Yeah, I think that's why the Carnosaur again is really strong. AP3, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
AP3 is super rare in the game from what I can see. And taking a 3+ save to a 6+ save is massive, huge, I would
yeah.
say. Um, but I was really looking forward to playing Empire. I've played against them. This is my fourth game of Old World. Three of them have been against the Empire, and one has been with them. I think we're slowly figuring out, and a lot of the internet community around Old World is figuring out how they're meant to be played. I think they have huge setbacks in some areas, but artillery is really strong, depending on who you're coming up against. The cannons are really strong against, say, like Lizardmen, and then the Hellblaster is really strong against Chaos, for example, with heavy infantry blocks. So I think the versatility lies there. The steam tank is huge. Let's just like it didn't do anything this game, but I still felt like you were purposefully
Ah, it's
avoiding it. Like,
possible.
yeah. So like you
It's just
bring if
not
you
worth it. Like I would have come back and mopped it up, but that I would never take it on straight away because it just sucks up. Like
yeah.
it's you just can't get rid of it for ages. The only thing I would do at the end is jam the Carnosaur can probably go hit it a few times and do damage, but otherwise I'd just be trying to just get whatever's left and throw it at it. Like it's
Mm.
really what is it? Strength, toughness 7, 10 wounds
10 wounds, three
and
up save.
unbreakable.
Yeah. Unbreakable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like that, all you have to do is bloody drive it around the map and fire a cannon at stuff. And if you can get a charge, then it's like that's a like you're
Hmm.
lucky, and that's a game-changing moment because it'll wipe out whatever it charges. But I don't think like it's good enough just to be a deterrent block in the middle of the map. As you said, battle magic is super strong. I think Fireball obviously is great, but Pillar of Fire is also really good, and I think Arcane Urgency is also fantastic. Getting something to march twice on turn one is huge. Demis, I love. I think they're one of the best units in the game, to be honest. Even though they didn't do much, again, they have that threat level that people they naturally deter from happening. And another key thing for Empire that I love as well is countercharge being on demis and your core Empire Knights. Empire Knights are the way to fill out core, in my opinion. And that's because of countercharge and the option to take stubborn. I think they're two of the best rules, like universal special rules across the game. Um, and they allow you to set up and they allow you to counter. And the games I've played have shown me that it's deployment and deterrence and finding charges that you want. If you get charged in a way that you don't want, in my experience, you lose the game. That's happened 4 out of 4 times, pretty much. Um,
Yeah, I think that the knights are the Empire core knights are just the nice combination of abilities that don't sort of fit. I mean, obviously Lizardmen have been a focus for me, but just drilled on Colbun knights, it's just like it's not necessary and it costs
mm,
like, with stupidity it's already why bother, but also like without countercharge you can't put yourself in a vulnerable position, whereas the drilled knights, yeah, as you say, they're just going to make a lot of ground on a flank. They're going to fan out to a single file on the turn that they charge. So, and that, they're just cheap comparatively to do that. So I think they're just a fantastic unit. And yeah, you could just I think I've written up stuff about how to make 500 points just from knights if you can afford it financially, because I could see Empire Archers, I can see the handgunners, or I imagine crossbowmen are probably better. There's a slight advantage, I think, in the crossbow with AP reduction, but
mm,
I think the knights are great. I think the demigryphs are good. I probably would just take 4. I think the actual 5 is more awkward than it looks. They
yeah,
take up so much space,
yeah,
and you only really sort of need 4 because it's the 2+ save with 3 wounds. It's just you just can't get anything done like against
mm,
them, and you don't want to spend all that energy to kill one demigryph and they get in combat anyway, there's always other things that you need to go and kill. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're just fantastic. I think with the steam tank, it's just yeah, as you say, the deterrence. If it gets into combat, it's not gonna lose for a long time, and the cannons are good, but they're just, I think, better than people imagine. I think everyone imagines that just because someone has a ward save, they're gonna save every time, but you
Mm.
make them roll enough. And no, as we sort of talked about early on, you don't want to bring your guy around from behind a rock just to get shot at. Like you just, even if it is a 5+ save, like the Slan has a 5+ ward, and I barely exposed him the whole game just because you just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that wraps that up. You're playing Mike's Chaos with a different 2K list of Lizardmen in a couple of weeks, so that'll be interesting. But we will do the same sort of battle report follow up on that with a couple of photos as well. So yeah, thanks Al, and looking forward to the next game.